This video is going to cover Chapter 12 in the base certification guide. Chapter 12 deals with how you can combine different data sets, and I'm going to talk about four different approaches. I call them merges following SPSS, but SAS actually gives some other names that are perhaps a bit better. So the four are concatenations, appending data files, interleaving data files, and then doing match merges. So let's start out with concatenations and appending. Let me give you a little bit of a motivation for why you'd want to do concatenations. So if we go over to my account on Harden, I'm in a folder right now that has all the raw data from the views, the page views of the AirMile social media website. And so what you're going to see is they gave me a ton of files. So 909 refers to September 09. This must be September 10, September 11, September 12, and so forth. 1101, which would be, I guess, January 2011. So in essence, they gave me a separate file for every month of data. Well, I don't want to have, however many this is, 20 odd months. I'd like to be able to have one big data set, and you'll see that's exactly what I produced. This all.sas7bdat has all of these months stacked on top of each other. Okay, so stacking data sets on top of each other is what we mean by concatenations. So why don't I give you a much more manageable example than that one that I just showed you. We go to the next page. I created two really small data sets. So this first data set, let's call A, and this contains someone's name and some value X. And so you get Joe, Fred, and Mary in data set A. And data set B contains four names, John, Julie, James, and Joe. I must have been in a J mood that day. To stack data set B on top of A, this is how we do it in SAS. We're going to make a brand new data set. I'll call it both. Both is completely arbitrary. It can be any valid SAS name. And then we're going to set A, then B. So the way to think about this is SAS is going to go look in file A. This A corresponds to the data set A up here. And it's going to just dump every record until it gets to the end of it. And when it gets to the end of A, it'll start on B. So here's the result. And what you'll see is we have Joe, Mary, and Fred, or Joe, Fred, and Mary, just as we had above. And then after that, we have John, Julie, James, and Joe. So that's concatenation. The story is we're going to make a new data set, and then we're going to set first all the records in A, then all the records in B in that new data set. Let's talk about appending now. So sometimes you don't mind overwriting one of your data sets. So in the example we just went through, suppose that we just want to add the records in B to A. Okay, that's essentially what we got with both, except instead of creating a brand new data set that I happen to call both, we're adding additional records to one of the two data sets. And so to do that, you're going to use proc append. So proc append really has two main arguments. The base, so that's the file that's going to get added to, and then data is the data that you want to add to the base. So if you print this, you'll see that you get exactly what you had before. Now, let me talk a little bit about why you'd want to use one versus the other. So appending is much more computationally efficient. Okay, the reason for this is you're using fewer resources. Instead of making a brand new data set that has all the pieces that were in the original two, You're just adding to one of them. All right, so in that sense, it's more efficient because you don't need an additional copy of whatever was in A lying around. All right, so A was both. Both had both A and B in it. So you're using less disk space with Append. It's also slightly more efficient because you don't have to walk through A. Proc Append's going to go find the end of A without going through all the lines, and then it's just going to tack on B. So you'll find Proc Append will run faster if you have giant data sets. One other option that the base certification guide mentions is if the variables names don't match up, you'll get an error message unless you stick a force option up here. So if you stick a force option after B, that'll tell SAS, don't worry if the variables don't match up. Okay, so we've talked about concatenation and appending. The difference is whether you create a brand new data set or whether you just add to the end of one of the two data sets. A third way of adding cases to a file is called interleaving. Now, you want to use interleaving whenever you have a sort order that needs to be maintained between the two files. So let me give an example of this to make it really clear. I've got two data sets, data set A and data set B, and each of these data sets have a customer ID and some amount variable in them. Now you'll notice that both of these data sets are sorted by the customer ID. So we have a couple records, 2 records for customer 1 in data set A, and 3 records for customer 2. Then off in data set B, notice we have a record and an additional record for customer 1, we have an additional record for customer 2, and then 2 other customers, 3 and 4, that aren't included at all in data set A. Now if we did a concatenation or an append to stack the cases of these two data sets on top of each other, we would then end up with 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, and then we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'd have to resort that if we wanted to have that file in the order of the customer ID. Now, sorting is a very computationally expensive exercise for the computer, and we'd like to avoid that if possible. So a better way to stack these files on top of each other is to walk through them simultaneously. Let's go down and look at the result, then we'll see how to achieve this. So by interleaving, what I mean is we're going to start out with data set A, and we're going to set all the records from customer 1. You'll see those 2 records came from data set A. And then we'd like to keep all the records for customer 1 together. Notice there was 1 record from data set B, and that is this third observation. Now then, the next thing we're going to do is go back to data set A and look for customer ID 2. And you'll see there were 3 records, and those 3 records get set here. Then once we hit the end of the records for customer 2, we go look in data set B, and we see that there is only 1 record for customer 2 that gets stacked at the end of those other records for customer 2. Notice data set A is now empty. We've already walked through that entire data set, so then we add the records from data set B. Now the main point is that this data set, the interleaved data set, still has the original sort order. So all the records for customer 1 are together, then 2, then 3 and 4. So we've saved ourselves a sort operation, which if this were a data set with millions of cases, could take quite a while. All right, so how do we achieve this interleaving in SAS? Well, the syntax is very similar to what we had before. We're going to make a brand new data set. This is very similar to the concatenation, and then we're going to set both data sets A and B. The only difference is that I'm going to add a by statement, and this by statement is going to cause SAS to do the interleaving as opposed to the straight concatenation where it first drops in A, then it drops in B. So that is it for interleaving. The next video is going to cover match merging.